Okay, in this little version of Steve Does GIS, we'll be looking at how we can classify a landscape into its geomorphological units utilizing a few classifications, simple classification rules. So what I've got on the screen in front of me is the digital elevation model, and we can see something of the terrain based on the colours represented. So the darker greys are lower in altitude, the paler greys and the whites are much higher in altitude. Now in the past what we've done is we've reclassified this by right-clicking on it, going to the Properties tab, going to Symbology and clicking on Classified, and remember we'd classified it into a number of different categories to show that which is below sea level and that which was above 1,000 meters. So I've got three classes here. I click on the Classify button, I can set the break values accordingly, so 0 for sea level, and then we'll set that middle one to 1,000 for 1,000 meters above sea level. Click on OK, and OK. So that's split that terrain model up into a number of different altitudinal bands. I'm just going to put on the hill shade on here that I'd previously calculated, just to show where the terrain lies, and I'm just going to set the transparency of that to 50% over the top. I'm just going to mess with these colours a little bit, so let's make that a sort of a reddish colour, and we'll make that, let's put that as a sort of pale blue, and sort of nice pinky colour. Yeah, that'll do. So, as regards picking out geomorphological features, you can see immediately altitude's not brilliant. We're picking out the area below sea level pretty well, but most of that's playa, most of it's flat. Remember, this landscape's divided up into mountains, fans, alluvial fans, and playa, with a few sand dunes and things kicking around, but those are the main three geomorphological units. And altitude, well, it's not a brilliant definition for classifying geomorphology. We know that the playas are extremely flat. We know that the fans are gently sloping. I'm just going to switch that attempt at the altitudinal classification off, and put the properties back to so it's not transparent. And we know that the mountains are very rough and jagged and supplying a lot of sediment. The fans of this intermediate landscape, this sort of depositional environment where sediment coming out of these ephemeral washes and valleys is then redeposited as the mountains are uplifted. So what we can do is we can use the interrogate icon to interrogate some of these data sets. So we know these are the mountains, so we're getting some high values up here. That's the hill shade. I want the let's put that there, the DEM. So mountains higher. As we come down the slope, we can see we're getting lower, 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 lower until we're hitting the minus numbers, 82 meters below sea level, and this is the playa area. So I suggest that one of the best ways forward is to use slope. Now we've calculated slope already, so we're just going to pop that back on. So there's our slope map. Now if we interrogate slope, so I'm just going to make it pull up the slope values. And the majority of the slope values in the mountains are pretty high. If you're very careful, you can hit on a summit and retrieve a relatively low value, in the 9 for example. But let's look at the slopes on the fans and just click around those. We can see that they're sort of in the 2s and 3s, maybe as much as 5, maybe 6, the heads of some of these fans, but generally speaking somewhere between about 2 and 6 degrees. The playa, on the other hand, very, very low slopes, so 0 almost. Can't see anything, yeah, 0.63, 0.03, so very, very low slopes on the playa. these slopes between about 2 or 1 and 2 and 6 degrees on the fans, and then immediately in the mountains much higher slopes. So let's have a go at classifying our terrain using slope. So I'm just going to do that visually by right clicking on properties for slope, going to symbology, going to classified, and putting in 3 classes, clicking classify, same as we did before. And let's say a first break value at, let's try 1 degrees, and then the next one at 6 degrees, and click OK and see what that looks like. Okay, the black areas are clearly the player, the grey areas looking like being the fans, and the white areas looking like more like being the upland areas. Might want to refine that a little bit. I'm just going to classify that again. Well, let's make that 8. Let's say, see if that makes any difference. Okay, looking a little bit more like it. Let's just pop our hillshade back over the top of that. Put it back transparent again. So display 50% transparent. Yeah, this is looking something like a little bit of noise where we've got roads and other things interrupting the dune fields around stovepipe wells there up at the top end of the mountain chain. Things disrupting that a little bit, but you see they're picking out the fans in the lower half of Death Valley look really quite nicely. The mountain areas, if we just make these colours a little different to make them stand out. So let's just make the player a sort of pale yellow colour. I'll make the fans a sort of a darky brown, and then make the mountains in a sort of pinky colour. So yeah, I think that's doing reasonably well at picking out the fans, the player, and the mountains. Okay, and if you follow that, I'm sure you'll get a similar kind of map. But do experiment with your break values to see if you can improve on what we've got here.